Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be, and welcome to a very special extra interview of Final Cut. Today, I'm joined by a man who my co-host Michael Fraser would be pleased to know was in Luke Cage. So let's see what else he's done. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kevin Mambo.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you for having me.
It's always an honour to have you on here. So the inevitable question: how did you get started out in acting?
Um, Actually, a very funny story. I was at a boarding school in Canada. I'm from Zimbabwe. I was born in Zimbabwe, lived there for a short time, and then ended up immigrating to Canada. And towards sort of the end of high school run, I was in a proper boarding school. 5 days of 6 days of uniforms, number one inspection in the morning, rowing team. I was a right winger, prefect for a short amount of time. Proper boarding school, and I was grew up as a musician. And the instructor at the school, a Scottish fellow, he was also a saxophone player. I was a saxophone player, so they were trying to woo me to this school to come and be a part of their program. He sends me some music. I ended up learning it just as an attempt to kind of get the game going by the time I get there. And he didn't like the fact that I was playing his own solos better than him. So once we started doing, school tours and things like that for recruitment, I said, "Listen, I'll play in your band for recruitment, but I'm not coming to class anymore." And so to kind of drive the spike, I signed up for the school play, which was what was it? The King and I.
Oh,
And then 10 minutes later, I booked the lead.
so in 10 minutes you booked the lead.
Yeah, so it was really
Wow.
kind of like being shot out of a catapult. It was I had never done any acting, but I thought to try to use whatever methodology that I had to learn and understand and study music and see what things translated, and thought let's start there.
Wow.
First foray, yeah, it's crazy.
It definitely was. I'm actually in a bit of shock about that. Now, you're obviously no stranger to great TV series. Like I've already mentioned, you've been in Luke Cage.
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
you, you've been in High Maintenance. You've been in three separate series of Law and Order, which I'm actually quite impressed by. And I think,
I think I've done all of them except for the one that came here a few years ago with the attorneys. They tried to do
uh,
a law one a little while ago, but other than that, and the brand new one, I've done the other one, all the other ones.
I'm not even sure if it's over here, to be honest.
Yeah,
But
it's
I'll have to have a
brand
look
new.
at this.
Yeah, it's brand new.
Cadillac Records, The Blacklist, one of my favourite series of this decade. Not of all time, because there's too many.
That is a
Well,
fun show. We shot part of that episode in a chocolate factory. My character sort of gets double crossed and ends up taking out the wrong guy. We chop him up. So
nice.
in the back of this chocolate factory in the sink is like, the chainsaws and pieces. But during the day we had to wear booties and we had to wear like little uh, uh, shower caps. So you're not getting hair and all the food, that sort of thing. 10 minutes later, you are all loaded with guns. The lights get turned down, and it's a shootout.
Nice.
And Andrew McCarthy just has so much fun directing this. He's like, we get to play cops and robbers as grown men for money. Can't
All
beat.
right, can I ask a question? Because I'm a big fan of this series. Did you have one of Raymond Reddington's famous speeches?
No, actually
Oh,
did not, because I kind of was the one to give it
really?
in the episode. It was not like one of the real long ones, but just one of the turnarounds.
Remember what it was?
I do not right at this
Oh,
moment remember what it was.
because the one thing I've always loved about the Blacklist is not just so much the action, the cast, James Spade's witty comebacks. It's always the speeches. It's
Hmm.
kind of like, wow, that's like it's actually quite a good series. It's
He's
like
amazing to work with. I
he
mean,
is. He must be.
you see his computer working, like working constantly. He is just so on top of it and so sharp. I mean, this is you have to remember sometimes, if we shoot things that are maybe supposed to be at night, oftentimes it's first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
So here's a guy that comes in first thing in the morning and has a 2-page monologue ready to go at top of the day.
Bloody hell.
Top of the
What
day.
a guy.
Yeah, a pro. I had a great time working with them. And after college, I'm sort of remedying that this year, but I haven't really been in another acting class. I've been working. I've been writing music. I was DJing in New York for a long time. So whenever I get to work with people like him, for me, that's school. You know, it's a job, which is great, but it's also school. And I kind of am picking and taking and pulling strings from different people along the way.
I was going to say, so what have been your career highlights aside from working with James Spader?
God, career highlights. I was in one of my career highlights has been working with Lynn Nottage, the playwright. I got to do Sweat. I'm in the original cast of Malima's Tale and the original cast of Ruined, which was about the war in the Congo we did 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And her work is just so globally impacting. And from that work, 2 Pulitzers came. And so we also got to really intersect with some amazing people that came from all over the world to be part of those kinds of discussions with us, whether it was about the war in the Congo, whether it's about the collapse of the Rust Belt in Pennsylvania and industry, manufacturing, etc., in Midwestern and rural areas, or whether it's about, Malima's Tale was about tusks. And we at the beginning of this play meet tuskers who are meet poachers who kill an elephant, and the spirit of the elephant and the tusk was played by my good brother Sa Ngaja. He and I both did Fela together, and we follow these tusks through their journey from poachers to the state office to the docks to Asia to the sculptor, and people wonder, how does this trade work? And we do it piece by piece. 3 actors done à la ronde in the round. So anytime an actor leaves the stage in the same story, another one will come and pick it up, and we just rotate the 3 of us for the show. That's been a career highlight. It's taught me a lot about humanity, teaching, acting, and definitely writing. Firing a bazooka on Luke Cage was awesome. No doubt. I mean, there's nothing around that. That was amazing. Let me think. I loved being able to be a part of watching and participating in a lot of that stunt work. That was fantastic. Real career highlight, I got to star on Broadway in Fela, the musical about Fela Kuti. While I was doing it here, Sa was doing it there in the West End. And through that experience, not only as a musician and as an African, it just, it was home to me. And I never often get projects that are just so specific to my background or skill set. So it was a dream. And I knew the music and played the music and had my own sort of cabaret style show of it as well. So came in prepared after Ruined, lost 60 pounds so I could fit into Fela's clothes.
Good, yeah.
We did it in New York. There was a tour while I was doing, I think I was touring, I was working with Bruce Hornsby at the time. And then Jonathan Goodluck came to see the show, and we organized a tour in Lagos and flew to Lagos and spent time with the entire family, went to Calcutta, performed at the Shrine. His son Sheun, who has taken the band Egypt 80s, is a very good friend and brother of mine. So I see him often, and whenever they're in town, I take my horn and play with Egypt 80. Something that I kind of dreamt about as a kid, So.
Yeah, just got a question about Luke Cage. Obviously, when you did Luke Cage, I believe it was 2018, and since then, Marvel actually have got the rights back. So in theory, Luke Cage can be part of the MCU at whatever point. So if that actually came to pass, would you actually like to be in the MCU?
Yeah, I would jump at the opportunity. I mean, I'm not going to completely age myself, but I'm old enough to remember all of these stories from when I was in early high school. So a lot of these Marvel stories, a lot of the Frank Miller stories, Neil Gaiman, Sandman, Watchmen, all the Frank Miller collection, including like Martha Washington, all of that stuff even going as far back as, watching Akira 40 times without subtitles. All of that was so part of my youth. And to kind of watch it now be realized is kind of an amazing arc. So I've always wanted to be a part of that universe, come back on this show, hopefully see if I can find a spot for myself in the Black Panther universe. But it's always, this work is exciting to me. I know a lot of people discredit it as pop purely, but I find, great talent, good vision, great storytelling. I watch them over and over again. Really enjoy it.
I tell you what, I'm glad you've mentioned all that, because Michael Fraser, who I've just mentioned, one of my co-hosts, we dub him the comic book encyclopedia now. We have been trying to get a series with him where someone can ask him a question he does not know the answer to. So, how good is your comic book knowledge?
I mean, it's good. You got to let me brush up and come back, that way.
I think we should have a head-to-head.
I know you do.
Would you be up for that?
Blood in the water, eh? Everybody loves blood in the water. Now you got Conor McGregor trying to punch people out at the MTV Music Awards. Blood in the water. It's such a human game, right?
You wait till I tell my other co-host this. He'll be licking his lips and he'll be grinding his hands together just like I am. Right. So in fact, if you want to come back on one Sunday and we can test his first theory out, can't we?
We can test it. I'll go in, but I won't get too hard.
How about we do it next year? Just because obviously, like I said, you're a busy man, and it gives you a bit of time to do some revision on it as well.
Yeah, I will be starting. I'm here in Washington D.C. I'll be starting a run of 7 guitars at the arena stage, pretty much through the Christmas season. So after that, I will be ready.
I'll pencil it in for January. I will tell Mr. Tasker as well.
That's fine.
He'll be more than chuffed. Oh yes, you're also a 2-time Emmy Award winner. Excuse me, I don't know where the Emmy came from. So congratulations on being a 2-time Emmy Award winner.
Thank you.
Does it ever get old knowing that you're an Emmy Award winner?
Well, it's one of those things that when I knew some other folks who had been in the same position, they were sort of, very kind of humdrum about it. And the night I won, some of the other castmates who had won came over and put like a champagne flute. A champagne flute fits perfectly between her wings in the back, so you can kind of, play Viking and drink out of it all night. But after that, they're too heavy to wear around your neck. You're not going to wear them in your ears. So it's one of those things, as long as they're not collecting dust and not being cared for. Barring that, in a lot of ways, this is why our eyes are in the front of our heads and not in the back of our heads, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's back in there somewhere. Although, very funny Emmy story that day. The first one. Complete surprise. I only got nominated after about being on the show for 3 months. But again, I come out of class. I watched the show. This was The Guiding Light, and this was in starting 95 when I was graduating from the theater department at USC. I would turn the show on and sort of just watch and see who's what, do my research. So once I got to set, I just started following the good habits of the actors on this show who had won. Fast forward, of course I didn't prepare anything or a speech or anything because I thought, the other 3 guys who had been in the business longer than I had a much better shot. Whirlwind night. It was a lot of fun. And I end up, after the show, on stage, kick-stepping with the Rockettes at Radio City.
Wow.
So it's like a cool thing, but it's a cool thing that opens doors to other like strange and cool things. So I'm leaving Radio City. I'm heading home. I'm trying to catch a cab. New York City in the 90s. I'm black. You can't get a cab. There's a cop outside. And he's like, wow, that's just amazing. Like, that's like a real Emmy. That's like a real award. I said, that is a real one. I just got it tonight. I don't even know what I'm going to do with it. And he says to me, he's like, that's really cool. Let me ask you a question. Like, can I hold it? And I said, well, yeah, if you let me hold your heater. He thinks for a second, and then he unsnaps his 9mm and hands it to me.
Wow.
He said, "Safety's on." I said, "I hope so." And then I handed it to him. And we stood there under the marquee gazing at each other's toys. And then he caught me a cab.
Oh, bless him. I don't know what's the funnier tale, that or the tale where Jay Leno was spotted doing, I think it was 160 in his McLaren.
Yeah,
So yeah. Do you remember? Have you heard of that tale or not?
no, I don't know it.
Well, apparently, I think it was one cop or two cop caught him speeding at 160 in his McLaren F1. So they pulled him over, and I think the tale goes basically, if we can we have a drive of this? If we do, we won't give you a ticket. And he said, sure. So we sat in the back seat. They drove it. I think that's how the story was. It has been a while since I've actually heard it. And basically, when the journey was over, he basically drove off without a ticket. So
right, I lived in living in LA on and off between LA and New York. LA is where I went to school. I had a good friend when I ended up moving out there for a while. Didn't have a car, and he had, because of an acquaintance he knew, he ended up buying like a '57 Chevy Marathon and completely redoing it. So for those who don't know, the Chevy Marathon is sort of that old school, bulky, 60s New York, 50s, 60s New York cab that we know from the films. But he had stripped all the paint off, and it was like this gunmetal gray, just really beautiful. And so, I get to drive this really fancy car while I'm there for, a few weeks. Everywhere I went, I was getting pulled over by cops. Driving while black is often a problem in Los Angeles, but I was getting pulled over by cops all the time. And they would come over, and then finally they would be like, "So what's under the hood?" I said, "You could have pulled up at the light and asked to look. You don't need the flashing lights." So yeah, getting pulled over by cops who want to look at your car. That happens a lot. That happens a lot.
Yes. You can be currently seeing him in Netflix series Hit and Run. I have sort of heard of it. I don't know the major points of it. So, what's the series about for those, including myself, who haven't seen it yet?
Well, it is an action thriller, an international action thriller at that. And starts with a man and his wife. She's a dancer in Israel, in Tel Aviv. And she gets struck and killed by a car. And as her husband, Segev Azulai, played by Lior Raz, who many of you probably know from Fauda, as he starts to kind of unpeel who hit her and secrets about her life, he ends up kind of in a very international chase. I play a detective here in New York City who is also 2 or 3 steps behind him trying to unravel what's going on. I'm trying not to give stuff away.
Yeah, it's always hard.
Because I hate it when people give too much stuff away. I love, popcorn and Discovery.
Yep.
It was a lot of fun to shoot. Greg Henry, who's a good friend of mine, is on the show as well. People probably know him from Scandal. Sanaa Lathan plays one of Naomi Hicks, one of Sege Azulai's exes, and tries to help him, put these pieces together. And our executive producers and showrunners, Don Presswich and Nicole Yorkin, teamed up with Avi and Lior to bring this to us. It's a really great show. Mike Barker is director and also executive producer, and he and our DP, Zoe White, come from Handmaid's Tale.
Oh, really?
So really just beautiful shots and really lush, a lot of depth. And it in an environment like that really kind of gives an actor freedom,
Wow. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say, I am actually familiar with Greg Henry's work. He was actually, I believe he was Mel Gibson's best friend to nemesis in Payback. Yes. And he was actually, what was his name? He was Golnar or Gallatin from Star Trek. Was it Star Trek Insurrection? I think it was. So I am very familiar with his work. I'm also familiar with Sanaa's work from Alien vs. Predator, Out of Time, featuring Denzel Washington.
Basketball.
Yeah, I am very familiar with her work.
Yeah, Greg and I met doing a musical, a workshop with Labyrinth Theater a few years back. And he had written a musical. He is a phenomenal pianist and a phenomenal songwriter, which is something that people don't know about him. He had written this, so I was called to kind of flesh it out. It was myself, him, Jasmine Cephas Jones, and as we just kept working and working and working. I knew nothing about his work as an actor, so I finished the thing and I come home, and he's everywhere. But whenever he's in town, if I'm doing a show downtown or the public on Broadway, him and his wife will come into town and we'll do a show, and then we'll have dinner and that kind of stuff. So
Nice.
that's a guy I follow behind a lot. He is fantastic. He
And
really
he is.
Yeah.
What was it like filming? Filming a Netflix series.
I find that, particularly I'm working Netflix, Marvel, and this, you tend to intersect a lot of the same people, which is nice. It's a real nice family feeling. Our show had a good amount of interiors and exteriors, and at that time of the year, it's really cold. So I was glad to be like the cool detective with the gigantic Hugo Boss coat and the wool fedora, and probably a couple of pairs of long johns underneath the suit. We got to really work organically. We got to really kind of take our time to see what works best. It's always interesting, whether it's a venture like this or if you're working in music or you're in the theater. The best place sometimes where you can be, you plan, particularly if you're going to be behind the camera. But to be able to have the freedom organically to work together as a team and to be able to use the words, I don't know. I always find that those are the best artists to work with. I don't know is such a welcome answer, as opposed to the hardcore defense and, and the posturing and all that other stuff that comes with it. I liked working with this crew very much. The writers were very receptive, and our directors as well were very receptive. If we wanted to sort of like, can we change that to this because XYZ, take the time to listen. That does not happen all the time. That does not happen all the time. I've been on plenty of jobs. It's like, great, nice to meet you. So you enter here, hit your mark, breathe, speak, thanks. More. Some people think that that's communication.
It's one way of communication. We can say that much. Obviously, you've done Netflix many a time.
Yeah.
Would you consider? I'm assuming you consider doing anything from Amazon. Amazon, Disney.
But yeah, I think the interesting thing about where our media is going, and I think absolutely due to this digital acceleration during pandemic, there is so much more room on these platforms to do more. If you're looking at the American dial, you start at the bottom, which is channel 2. CBS is the first station, channel 2. Very, very, very conservative, right? In terms of subject matter, in terms of the raciness, gore, violence, any of those kinds of elements are very, very conservative on 2. And as having been on The Guiding Light, which was the first television show coming off of the radio, which started off as 15-minute morality plays, right? So that shows you kind of where that network really finds its bread and butter. And as you come up, things get a little looser. You get to NBC, you can have, guns. You get to ABC, people cursing once in a while. I feel like once you have freed yourself to some of these platforms, the freedom in terms of what you can accomplish in the writing and the storytelling, I think, is much more freeing. I mean, you book yourself a fantastic series on NBC, that pays great. Let's not lie about that. But at the same time, artistically, I think because there's so much more space and because there are so many more platforms, there will be a larger panoply of stories to tell. I mean, if we didn't have Amazon, we couldn't have The Boys, right?
Definitely not. Just like if we didn't have Disney Plus, we couldn't have What If or
right.
we couldn't have anything TV series wise like WandaVision,
Right.
Falcon and Winter Soldier, and anything else. And actually, come to think of it, I'll have to mention Hawkeye because Hawkeye actually released a trailer a couple of hours ago.
I can't wait to see 10 Rings. I think that's going to be fantastic.
As in Shang-Chi?
Yeah.
I've watched it.
Yeah.
I have.
I can't wait. I haven't had a chance to go yet. But we get to tell these longer stories. And, our show is, 9-10 episodes? But because of, the logistics of shooting and locations and all the stuff that goes with it, you do a show like this, you're not shooting it episode to episode or maybe 1 or 2 episodes at a time. You are now looking at this as a 10-episode film. So now you're really into long-form storytelling. I can't imagine what the experience was like, hunkering down and doing all of Lord of the Rings at once. That must have been an amazingly immersive experience.
Yep, or doing both Matrix movies,
right?
Reloaded and Revolution. Is it Revolutions? It is Revolutions, isn't it? It's been that long since I've actually watched them. Just briefly, like you said, you mentioned you've been on Broadway. So I have never been to New York. I've never been on Broadway. So what is Broadway actually like?
I mean, you've been to the West End.
I have been to the West End. But that's the thing, though.
Take the West End and multiply it financially by at least by a score of 10 to 20. I mean, we have big productions, some of these shows, right? And the expensive shows. Chicago was across the street from us when we were doing Fela.
Nice.
The Wicked is coming back. Moulin Rouge is about to open in a month, and I hear that is just like high spectacle. Like they really went the Baz Luhrmann route, and I've seen some of the costumes. Like it's intense.
Jesus.
So there is the capability to do those size of shows. Periodic Cats. Large scale shows. Now, not all Broadway houses, of course, are that size. We can go from, a 600 seat house to, a 2,000 seat house. There's a large array, I would say, of shows. So our district starts right on 40th Street, which I think that's where like Newsies was playing. It's a Disney-owned theater, and go from 40th Street all the way up to, let's say, 54, 55. Between 8th Avenue and 6th Avenue. And that includes like, a swath of Times Square. That's a large area, and that is a lot of theaters.
Jesus.
It's a lot of theater. And that's just Broadway. Then there's, 92nd Street, and there's Lincoln Center, and then you go downtown, and there's all the downtown theaters as well with the Soho Rep and, the downtown scene, which is far more progressive and avant-garde than you would find in a much more commercial Broadway. So it's there, and a lot of I've been blessed actually to be in that community because I've just gotten to work with legendary people. I did an original show a few years ago of Ethel Fugard. A Lesson from Aloes was one of the monologues that got me into college, and here I am on the phone talking notes with Ethel Fugard on his new play.
Oh, bless you.
I
do enjoy my bit of theatre as well, as you can probably imagine. I've been a bit gutted because obviously West End's been shut.
Yeah.
Obviously Broadway's been shut as well. Everything's starting to go back to normal. So I tell you what, I'll make you a deal. When I actually can and get my son over to New York, let me know if you're in a theatre play, and I'll come and watch you.
That'd be great. That'd be fantastic. Yeah.
Oh. Before I forget, I did forget about ask this next question about him. Is there a second season coming? Do you know?
We haven't heard. I was looking in my phone last night as I was watching something, and it was about who's being renewed and who's being canceled and who's being renewed and who's being canceled. Right? You flip through that clickbait,
as you do, yeah.
And I start to see a trend that one. Unless you have come out of the gate on network particularly, and you're like a huge hit, a couple of shows got 2 seasons. Oftentimes, a show that may be interesting that is still gaining viewership, they've gotten hurt by having to stretch because of COVID, right?
Yep.
I mean, we work sort of in the same situation. I'm kind of proud of this team. We shot here, and after the New York shoot, they still had 3 episodes to shoot in Israel, and between the two, COVID. So he got pushed back by a year. The upside, people are home and they can watch, and we were number 10 in the country last week. We've been trending heavily on Netflix already. So there's been a great international response. I hope we get a second season. I think we've left it at a place where another season can tidily wrap some things up and bring some closure. So another season would be great. I would work with this crew all the time.
So there's a few loose ends to tie up.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so it must
always
be a
as
season
he twiddles his moustache.
Yeah, fair enough then. Just briefly, have you actually got a bachelor's in fine arts?
Yes. Bachelor's in Fine Arts at the University of Southern California.
Wow.
And I got lucky to get a job coming out of school. They'd hired me from the soap after an audition from spring break. I mean, I really did get lucky. So I never got the opportunity to explore grad school because I went to work right away, which is grad school.
Are you Irish?
I am Zimbabwean, but grew up in Canada.
I'm going to say, because you sound awfully like you've been raiding a pot of leprechauns gourd. Lots of love there, sir.
No, Canadians are a little clipped, I think, dialect-wise. It was funny because it took a long time to book work because I just didn't sound American enough for a while. Like, I had to really work at it. But I get on the phone with folks over the pond. My dialect slips a little this way. I get on the phone with Canadians. It slips that way. So...
Just briefly, have you got anything coming up that you'd like to talk about that we haven't actually discussed? Or is there anything you'd like to personally promote?
Yeah, I'm a part of a company called Greatest Stories Never Told. And my partner and co-writer has her son. She's white. Her son married a lovely woman from Barbados. They have 3 kids, and she went to see if she could find, books for kids that would at least reflect who her grandkids are or what their experiences may be or what their history may be. And couldn't find anything. Wrote a book about James Herman Banning and Thomas Cox Allen sprouting wings, about the first 2 black men, African-American men, to fly across the United States in 1932. When a plane that they built by hand, parts from downed planes. And it was particularly for the African-American community, a real event of pride as they landed in these towns and got help from people along the way. So she'd started writing a play, and I came in to help finish co-writing and directing and composing as well. And we've taken this play, The Flying Hobos, which is what they were called, to schools, and particularly schools that are underserved, because this is the type of curriculum that they will not get. It's the type of curriculum that will not end up in their history books, although it is very much a part of their rich history. So we had been traveling to schools, and, COVID. So we had found a way with some of our designers to bring the show, which is interactive. We talk to the kids, have them help us figure out and do some math, science. So it appeals sort of to what they call here the STEM program. And we've been supported by the National Endowment of the Arts and got some grants from NASA. We're looking for a humanities grant, and it gives us an opportunity to bring this subject matter to the kids where they are, if they're not going to have the opportunity to come to where we are, right?
Yeah.
So our next 2 plays will be Katie Payne, the scientist who discovered the language of elephants speaking subsonically, and Bessie Coleman, the first African-American woman to get her pilot's license overseas in 1927, and build a canon of work like that to share with kids. So I'm very proud of that project. I'm also working with, we've taken a bit of a hiatus because I've had a bunch of stuff going on, but I'm working with Omar and with the director from your hometown, Che Walker. And Omar had a one-man show that he had done on piano that he's been performing there for some time, and I'm going to try to put together like the American one-man show version of it. I'm a huge fan of Che's and a huge fan of Omar's from back in the day as well. So that's exciting.
I wish you the best of luck with that, sir.
Thank you.
And the last question, inevitably, as anyone who listens, have you got social media?
I do have social media. The best place to find me is I am Mambo on Instagram.
And you've just been followed.
Thank you, sir.
If anybody wants to know if it's the right one, he's actually put Mambolito, DJ K Plus, Blaz Afro, no Audio Deluxe 88 Sound, Sheldon Shaw on hashtag Luke Cage Season 2, hashtag Marvel, hashtag High Maintenance. You've actually got a Tumblr.
I do, but I don't think it's on. I can't remember the password. I'm a digital mess. I grew up playing jazz. I'm really a retro guy. The older I get, the more comfortable it is.
Oh, bless you, mate. To be fair, everyone always says, "Oh, you need to keep everything new," but old stuff's usually great anyway. I mean, look at Motown. Motown was great.
My best friend Kelly Craig had been a musical director for them for the touring with the Funk Brothers.
Really?
And I got to on 42nd Street at BB King's play shotgun on my horn with the original band, and I got to sing My Girl.
Wow.
Yeah, and because we're analog guys, and he invited me down, and I know the tunes.
Well, I think the only way to finish it off with my usual one-liner is, I'm the guy who just basically makes everybody envious of because he's lived his dreams, Kevin Mambo.
Would that were true.
There's still plenty of time yet, sir.
I'm working on it. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for that. Melanie, we are finished, just so you know.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Kevin. That was a fantastic interview.
Thank you.
Melanie, I'm assuming you heard about the Are You Smarter Than Encyclopedia that me and my co-host have been trying to do.
I did hear about that. Let's make a note to circle back at the beginning of next year.
I was going to say, if you want, I can mail you, because the kids usually go back to school about January 4th, so could mail you then and see
Sounds
what.
good.
Right,
Sounds
Kevin.
good.
Oh, Kevin, one more
Yes,
thing.
sir.
If this does go to pass, I need 11 questions from you. It doesn't matter what range of comic books it is. Give him your worst. Please give him your worst. We'll just enjoy it so much.
You got it. I'll start my homework.
Oh, I'm just going to wait and see what he says. Right. Thank you to you very much as always. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
Right. Good luck with everything, mate. And Melanie, I will see you at some point.
All right. Thank you, Dean. I'll send you the recording as soon as it uploads, okay?
Thank you. Take care of yourselves, both of you.
All right. Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye.
Cheers.